Okay. Let's see if it comes up on mine.
Would be
Awesome. I'll turn off the audio on it as I share.
okay. And we're live. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited to be here and talk with somebody who has an amazing amount of energy that literally exudes from the messages, from your Facebook, just hearing you talk. You have this energy and glow about you that is very, very contagious and very kind. I definitely pick up on a very kind energy, which is super cool. And I'm very excited to start this off. So to start off, you just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm actually really excited to be here because I got to catch the first few episodes that you had. And in doing that, it just really got me even more energized for this too. I think where a lot of my energy comes from is I'm very aware of how I use certain things in life to get that energy that I'm craving when it's really not giving me that. Like I've given up coffee before. I'm working on that again after a baby. It's kind of hard to do that again. And then I also have cut down on alcohol and understanding that, oh, I'm doing those things to create this certain thing that I want. Like maybe I want to be able to dance, but I don't feel like the freedom to have that. And starting to open myself to have that freedom from myself instead, and not asking a substance, something outside of myself to give it to me, or becoming more aware of that, like, okay, this isn't aligned with me. The coffee helps it seem like it's aligned with me, but it's not at all aligned with me. And that's part of it too. And I feel like all that awareness comes from my openness to years ago, I got abused by a cousin. This is when I was like 10. And from then on, like I was told by my mom that like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like I've had worse was one thing. I remember tying that into your first episode. I remember hearing that about, like not shaming about what we go through. And I wanted to that in here because it panned out into me wanting to be heard by someone that, it is actually bad. Like, and it turned into all these different things in my life where it became worse and worse that I was taking abuse. And it got to a point where I understood that no one needs to hear me but myself, and I hear myself. And it turned into this relationship with this man that actually like teamed up with my parents. I had a restraining order from him, and they made a threat to me that I had to stay with him or they'd do all these things to me, like have my car repoed, like a whole bunch of things. Like I gave too much trust to them at the time. And it caused me to realize that I have to choose me. No one else is going to choose me. And I found myself from then on, it was just a beautiful process. I moved out of there. I stopped trying to have that bond that I wanted from my parents. I found that bond within myself. And it led to me, I moved to New Paltz, if anyone knows where that is in New York. So it's a very artsy community. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience because it opened me to allowing myself to be loved for who I am. Because I actually went out with some friends and I did something funny. I love telling the story because it's so awkward for me to say. So I went up to a bartender that I liked for months and I decided to do an experiment. You know how men say those cheesy lines to women?
Yeah.
I did that. Did it hurt when you thought of heaven? Stuff like that. But the absolute worst one that I did was to the bartender, and I told him, I grabbed his shirt and I went, "This shirt would look great on my floor." He didn't know what to say to me, but that panned out into being, he didn't talk to me for a week. I wanted to build a relationship there, and I find out that he's actually moving, so that's why we couldn't. But I took those 2 weeks that I got to get to know him, and I was just absolutely myself, and it was a beautiful experience of seeing that I could be loved for being me, and in opening myself in that way, and allowing myself to choose someone instead of waiting to be chosen. I did that in relationships too, and it would be the worst relationships would choose me. And it just helped me to open myself to choosing my husband. I'm the first one that kissed my husband. I'm the first one that like initiated so many things in a relationship. I asked him out.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, that was very important to be the person that initiated. I needed that.
Yeah. You know, there is so much that you just said that I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're
Don't
like,
even go here.
yeah, because like with my wife, when I decided to, hey, put myself out there and go, I'm going to put myself out there and try to have a date with a woman, which I have never done. So, I mean, and let me just say, like, we were married 90 days later, like, but we started talking and I asked her out because and we were talking for a few days, but I just like, I felt it, like I knew there was more there. And she thought our first date was going to be, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to go home. And like, she had plans after. We were at the restaurant for 10 hours. Like that's how that went. And like I asked her out, like I did all of these, but it was so empowering for me because I put myself second in the majority of relationships that I was ever in. And, there was a much deeper reason as to why I did that. And, as I got to understand that as I started growing over the last few years, but like, I always put myself second. I always let, myself be in this place where it was like, hey, choose me, not knowing consciously I was doing that, but I was. And I had this major area of like codependency that I didn't realize like I had fallen into. I had no idea, go back 20 plus years, what codependency even was. But, hear that pattern, and it just kept persisting until it didn't anymore, until I just said no. And like that of like, I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do that. And with what you said about the cheesy lines, like me and a group of friends, we were out for a festival one weekend and we decided that we were going to do that. We were going to use cheesy lines on people and just see what happens. And it was, it also made for some of the most fun that I've ever had like that. And just the connection that we had with friends of just laughing between these cheesy lines. And then somebody walked up to me, and I don't even remember exactly the line of what it was, but it was the cheesiest line, not knowing that we had been doing this all weekend. And I'm like, I can't even take you seriously. Like, I can't. But it was fun and it was empowering to be on that other side. So taking that control and bringing that in. And so, like I know that from part of your, what we talked about prior and what you told me is like, that choosing you. And that is so powerful in the way that like, we can't even imagine until we start to do that on a daily basis. And I recently had someone who I'm working with tell me how, they're showing up and they're choosing themselves. And, I'm like, yeah, listen to that voice. Think about that empowered version of you and go, what would she do? What would he do? Like if he was to show up or she was to show up in that place that you are a priority, how would you react? And so you do just that. You take the initiative, you ask the person out, you don't wait for the things to come to you if you're feeling it.
No, you don't do that, because then you have that idea that you're never good enough for that person. You start to believe that. I used to put up a wall that I couldn't date certain people. And you don't need to do that to yourself. I remember what you're saying, because you're talking about the choosing yourself. Like so many places I can go with that. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. But I remember how I had to realize, one of my friends gave me really good advice to make a list of what I want the person to be like that I wanted to date. And from that list to start to create those qualities within myself. And a big one that came up that was the biggest mistake with my last relationship before my marriage was the most unsafe relationship I was ever in. And that happened because I didn't create safety for myself. So I had to learn how to do that to have a safe relationship. So I started, like, I hate admitting that I did some of these things, but like carrying, oh, what's it called that you can buzz people with? I had one of those.
Oh, like a taser.
I had a taser. Yeah. Like I did certain things for myself, doing I don't even know if it really works. Like you have your keys between your fingers. There's a comedian that makes fun of that. Like you're kind of Wolverine. So, like really doing anything to support myself. And I think that's what helped me to find someone that supports me so much. And I know you know this too, probably with motherhood, is that you have to learn that again. It's like it's like being reborn in some way. So I had to realize also that like I was really into doing the whole narcissistic abuse thing.
Yeah.
And then motherhood, when I gave birth to my firstborn, brought me really into my body because I really started to like believe in my body and itself, and I really wanted to come back to that more. So then I started to like study Akashic records and getting more spiritual, and that's when I realized that I was still limited in a way to myself. Like I was victimizing still. Like it's really good when you come to realize that, okay, it's you go from blaming yourself for the abuse to understanding the other person had a part to do in it. But then getting ourselves to move from that to what's the empowering story here? What is this actually going to bring into my life from this? And as I was saying to you, like when I dated my ex, that empowering story wasn't there before. I can tell you that. I was just a victim. I wanted everyone to know, don't date this person, like all these things and stuff like that. And then as I made the shifts and as I started to build my own support, like I got a therapist who supported me and she saw my story too. I added in even more people that could see what I saw too. But most of all, I saw it and that's what mattered the most. So it's building that support.
Yeah, like I building the support is huge. Like I talked a couple episodes back about how I spent a good majority of my life feeling like I was alone because that support, I didn't feel like it was there, which in actuality was more of a protection mode for myself to keep myself in that place because that was my known, that was my bubble. So like going outside of that bubble, I lost my story and I lost the story of what made me until I decided like, you know what, I'm going to make a new story. Like that story was all good and fine for when it served its purpose. But I got to a place where like that story just didn't serve me anymore. Now it's time to show up and write a new one and then rewrite the pieces of this old story that don't suit me anymore to change it into being that empowering place so that yes, I am able to ask for that support. I'm able to go to a place where like working with a coach, working with a therapist, working with other people, being able to speak at this point with being able to speak to my wife in a way that I've never had a relationship where I can be felt like I could be myself, where I am fully open and just like there's no fear of like, hey, I'm going to show up as me because I don't need to impress you in any way because you should already be there with me where we are. And that's, I don't need to show up in any other form besides who I am. And if I feel like I need to, then this isn't for me. And it's like finally taking that and understanding that like, and it all took this one pivotal relationship that was like just very on and off. And in hindsight, ended up being this very pivotal point where I went in a whole other direction with my life, where I went, I'm done with this. Like, here, I'm going to open myself up in a way that feels good to me and not in a way that I'm, going towards this person just to get them to love me feeling. And it was like, because you're not going to ever get anyone to love you. Like, that's not how it works. Like, they're going to show up in that way. And so being able for myself to show up in a way that felt good took having that support, took talking to other people and working through the things. And like, for me, I'm that person that like, I would go through therapy, have coaching and have stuff where it's like, each person would probably speak like a couple words. And then I would just like go on this whole like hour of like, oh, this, and this, and start connecting all the dots. But just by having that person there, I was able to get it all out from within me. And, I could see it. Like, it's like laying all your cards out on a table going, oh, like I could see where I could potentially have a really good hand over here if I shift this card. And then if I discard this card over here, it's all going to look a little bit better. And now I have this winning hand in life.
I love that vision that you created there with the cards. That's a really good one. As I was listening to that, it reminded me also that we don't realize that inner battlefield that we have going on, and how when we have those relationships that are unhealthy, it's a reflection of the inner dialogue. You pretty much created this person that is walking and talking that inner battle within yourself, and now you're just talking back to it, and it can be really healing. I know some people might not be there yet where they can see that yet, and that's okay too. We get there. So that's what I realized later on. It's like he's my walking and talking inner dialogue. And it's me starting to say no to that outside, helped me to say no to that within myself. And that was like so important to get to that point. And that's also part of the whole shadow work too, is not sure if this is a good transition into it, but
And I think that's great. Well, actually, as you go into that, let's take a step back and have you explain to people who have never heard of shadow work what shadow work is, and then for those that have heard of shadow work, like how that transition works as what you're starting to explain right now.
okay, so shadow work, this is my version of explaining it. So when you're a child, I'm sure you remember making like the puppets, like doing the spider or doing like the dog in the dark. I think it's like this. So doing those. So the way I think of it is that shadow work is you realizing, okay, so what is getting in the way of my light shining in the world? Like we really want to do these things, but we always hit these we hit something, a bump in the road again and again. We keep hitting that bump. And we're like, but I want to shine. I want people to see me. But we have to realize that we had this mechanism that was going on for safety to keep us safe that we thought. But then we have to realize, okay, so I'm no longer living in that situation and it's no longer keeping me safe. And now I'm living in this other situation now. So how is that affecting me when I'm, moving through things? So let me give an example then. So when I was growing up, it was really helpful for me to be quiet and not like seen and not heard. Perfect example of describing it. So now in business, is it helpful for me to be seen and not heard? Is it going to really help me at all? It's not. So what it is that I'm realizing that my own hand is a thing creating the shadow. So then the power is in my hands to craft my life with the shadows. And it can feel really scary when you hear shadow work, but trust me, it really isn't. The way I think of it too is that babies are made in the dark. When you think about it, it's this dark, unknown area. And that was like a huge battle for me with my second born. Um, but that's like part of what it was for me. And shadow work kind of found me because I do shadow work with deities or deities, however you want to say it. Deities is more of the UK version. I say deities because I'm in the US, but it really doesn't matter. So when I started working with Celtic was also around the time that the Morgan showed up for me. And I was going through a time in my life where, again, I let other people, what they're doing and stuff like that, bother me again. And I didn't realize I was going through this hard time. The Morgan was like asking me to work with her. Sometimes a deity will come to you and ask, like, they want to work with you, or you can ask to work with them. There's no right way on this. It's whatever your journey is. So she asked to work with me, but she wanted not physical offerings. So, and that's so significant to me too, because when you work with a deity with shadow work, it helps you to understand that your time is worthy of being an offering to people also. Like however you work with a deity, it teaches you like healthy relationships with people too. So, and in my work with her, she just wanted me to sit with her in the dark. It's like, okay, and meditate. And in that meditation, I realized that I had hidden trauma for myself. So if you have hidden trauma and you don't know what it is, work with the Morgan. I had hidden for myself a miscarriage. And in understanding with her why that miscarriage happened, I was able to start to be in my creative power again, in my creative energy again. And then to have my second born now, Odin, like that's a huge sign for me of that. Um, and just like working with her, that brought out so much for me, and realizing that like the things that so this is something that I love to say too, is that you look at movies and you get so frustrated with the villain. And then it's like, well, the villain helps to build character, literally, to build character. So the things in life that we don't often like help us to up level. So that's part of it too. And there's so many deities you can work with. The Morgan's just one for shadow work. I like Hades too. Hades is great for helping you to become visible again in your life, because he has that the cap of invisibility that's part of it too, and bringing out the dead parts of you, that you decided that needed to be suppressed and buried down deep because it felt like it was sinful. It was going to make it so you weren't attractive to the world, that you weren't good enough society or your family. So it's like all these dark beings, well, they're perceived as dark. Like you have Lilith and you have so many others. And what you're really doing in the shadow work when you choose any deity to work with is that you're looking at, okay, so what do I judge in that deity? Like I really judged Hera. And Hera, I can be really like attitude sometimes with a deity to prove if it's the deity or not. And you don't really, you know, with the energy, you don't have to like do that. And she told me that, well, do you enjoy when people judge you based on the stories that other people say? And that's when I realized that a lot of deities have, like us, there's people that create stories that aren't true. And it's you creating that relationship with them to get to know them. And that also helps you to create a relationship with yourself to get to know yourself. So it's a really beautiful back and forth relationship. And I don't just work with feminine. I don't just work with goddesses. That's one thing I'll say I'm not okay with doing. I think that you have to work with both. You have to work gods and goddesses. It's for me, it's healing the father and the mother wound is why. That's part of it. And there's definitely more aspects to it.
That's I love listening. I get so fascinated about, especially stuff that I don't know as much about. Like, so it's like I love it, and like I go down, ask my wife, I go down these rabbit holes that get very big because I'm like, oh, like what is that and how can I apply that back to my life? Like, so I love to be able to listen to that. So like listening to everything that you just talked about was so beautiful. So definitely thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And with that, like, what do you think was your most pivotal moment where you took this journey into shadow work?
I think that it was partially also, so you have me going through my miscarriage. I feel like that was one of the pivotal moments. But then I feel like through my journey of giving birth, I went through a lot of that. And an important moment, like I would not say this during that time or maybe early in postpartum. I was really disappointed with my birth. I'll be honest with you with that. But I had the birth I wanted. So the thing that I did not understand in my journey was that, so I did this book called Labor Like a Goddess. Sounds really up my alley, right? So I thought in doing all the shadow work in the book that I wouldn't have any blocks come up. Hello, no. What ended up happening was that I was just more aware of the blocks and I was actually able to support myself to move through them though I was fighting in the beginning, which goes really well with my son's name Odin. So because warrior god there. So it was really the opening of me being allowing and seeing that like Odin the god, I don't know everything and true knowledge of, just knowing anything, just experiencing it. And that's what I love about the deities too, is they're not like monotheism. So polytheism is more about having different gods that have different roles so they work together. They're not perfect. And what's great about Odin, not not my baby, I'm talking about the god right now. So, Odin he's a god of knowledge. Doesn't mean he knows everything. He's always out there wandering and being curious and getting to know everything. So I feel like the biggest moment for me would be that birthing experience because it helped me also to realize the deep shadow work that comes with motherhood. There was so much shadow work with that. There's a book I can recommend. I can't think of the name right now, but I can look at my collection here. So, and it really brought me into realizing that because like you, I actually jumped into my marriage right away, but a little different circumstances. So I got married for religious reasons. And we really took that dive. And when you take the dive and you're not ready and you're going to be a mother too, it can feel like you're being kidnapped. So you always have this feeling like, well, I could always run off or something like that. And you never get to settle into motherhood. So something that I had to learn was to actually allow myself to like move through those feelings of having that, or that sacred rage of Kali that comes with motherhood. Like there's so much shadow work with motherhood that helps you to actually grow. So it's just exponential. I don't know if I can get into this right now, but I can always link it later for
Perfect.
everyone. So there's a really good book. I'm pretty sure it's just motherhood, finding, and like something about getting to know yourself. That's a really good one to do too. Um, just motherhood overall is a lot of shadow work. I'm sure you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and so not on the lines of motherhood, but on the lines of relationships and that we're forming is, you spoke on something and I just brought back a memory that I have not thought of in a long time is anytime I would be placed into, and by placed, I put myself there and I own that, is in these relationships that were not for me. And as soon as they got to that point where it was like, hey, we're past the talking phase, we're in a relationship now, I would know that it wasn't right by the feeling of I'm literally feeling like I'm closed within a box and I'm in there and I feel trapped and like I can't breathe and like here I've got to get out. And in the last, I mean really the last like 6-7 years of my life has been like such a crazy amount of growth that has gone on. And I've had to look back to like, that was always that sign of like, hey, you know what? Like, this is coming up for you because one, like, I need to deal with it. And instead of just going, okay, I'm going to get out of the relationship, I'm going to like move forward, I was not dealing with what that box feeling was. And that like that side of me that was coming up saying, hey, here you are, but yet I placed myself in this box. So why would I place myself in this box if I know that I didn't like being inside of the box? So, and that is part of that inner shadow that we have too. It's like, hey, like that's, like I am bringing in and mirroring in the things that I don't want to have going on in my life because I need to deal with it so that I can actually break down that box and I can move on. And so being able to look and go, hey, those were all signs coming up, for me. And like, I look back at all of that going, oh, missed a lot of those signs, before. And that's how like I also knew like in the relationship that I'm in now, how I knew that it was, a very safe place for me to be in is I never felt like I was being placed inside that box. There was not one bit of that. And whereas like, that part of me that was protecting myself for so many years by not dealing with it, I would break up with every relationship I ever had. I broke it off. And I like in hindsight, I'm like, that's not actually a good quality. Like, that's not the quality I want to embody. And so learning how to actually process that side and go, hey, I own this part of me that I still need because it has been there and has provided essential protection, but I need to be friends with it. I need to be able to sit with it and go, hey, like I needed this, but I also need to be able to be aware so that I can process the things that are coming up and not just keeping them shoved in that box. And so, things that are very pivotal, like motherhood, like these relationships, these feelings that come up when we're going through these places, that's that side going, hey, we're here for you to work on, or you place it back in there for it to come back up later.
Right. Yeah. Oh, when you're saying that about the box, I think about Pandora's box, and I've done work with Pandora's box. And people get really like negative about Pandora's box. I know it's another dark thing. That's where I go. So Pandora's box has all these different things that we don't want to experience, but at the bottom is hope. So it's our willingness to be with ourselves, like you're saying. It's that experience of commitment to yourself. I feel like that's what you were missing, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
could give that to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that like people can work on with Aphrodite. Like that's a really great first start, I would say. Like I'm sure you want me to give an example of where to start
Yeah.
deities. So I would say Aphrodite is a great like something soft to start off with. She's one of the first ones I started off with. She came to me and she had me actually write my commitments to myself. So think about it as vows to yourself. Like, and what will you vow to yourself now? Like I vow to actually hear myself first before I allow the rest of the world in my day. Things like that. Or I vow to take time to take in the beauty around me. Like someone was watching me in the park the other day. I had a moment without my kids and I was just closing my eyes and just hearing the world around me. And it was just really gorgeous. So just hearing the natural sounds and allowing like, all the man-made things to disappear for a second. Like things like that. Just any commitment you can think of for yourself, that I won't allow myself to get to a place of anger with my children when I'm really angry at myself for not putting myself first, that I will always prioritize my moments with myself. I like to highlight the MOM in the beginning of moments because it's a moment to me. So, and just thinking about what are those for you and put them somewhere that you can look at them and keep those commitments to yourself is one. And then anything that you can do to come back to your body. I did an Aphrodite circle before. So coming back to your body can be obviously the breath, coming to the five senses. I'm sure a lot of people know about those. So like just sitting and feeling the seat beneath you. Where do the clothes hit your body? Like we're not present to that very often. It's like you can feel your clothes if you really think about it, but it's not something we think about. Or where exactly on my butt the seat is hitting, of all things to think about. Or like find another sound in the room that you didn't know was there, and then it can absolutely amaze you what that sound is, or you can smell, or anything else that you weren't conscious of around you. And it's like you got to come home to yourself, and that's what birth allowed me to do. And I was looking for that, and spirituality brought me back home into my body, because I didn't realize that when you're so prioritizing everything around you, you're learning to kick yourself out of your body so that everything else can have whatever it wants from you. So it's just coming back home is what Aphrodite will help you to do. She's not really the goddess of love and relationships. She's the goddess actually of self-love. You can look that up too. Um, and have fun with food. This is a favorite exercise that I have that you can do. So get something that you love for a snack. And I want you to just look at it, like really take it in. It could be like a piece of chocolate is what I'm picturing. I used to do method acting, so bear with me. So I'm picturing like a ball of chocolate, and don't touch it yet. Just like look at it and see how light hits it, any textures, any lines or anything like that. And then I want you to hold it and touch it and see what it's like, and really think about it. Like maybe you feel some ridges from where there's lines on it, or like anything else that you feel with it. And then when you actually like smell it, and trying to think what else I want you to do with it. I know it sounds weird to hear it. The hearing, I feel like, is more so when you put it in your mouth. And when you put it in your mouth, feel exactly where you feel the taste of it. And just learning to be more present with yourself and in your body is going to be like really valuable to a lot of areas of your life. So just coming home to your body, and something I feel so uneasy about sharing, but that means I should go there. So worship is something that we should do for ourselves too. So if you actually go to Webster, I'm going to bring it up here real quick. So worship comes from the word worth, is part of it too. And then it's the adoration, the giving reverence to, it's respect, it's honoring. And these are things that we should do for ourselves. And that is something that I learned from the Morgan. So how can you worship yourself? I know it sounds like a weird word to tie to yourself. Like, why would I say that? Like that's for like a god or something outside of myself that's like almighty and in control and stuff like that. But no, worship yourself. It's so important. You got to do that. Like, because then if you set the standard wherever that bar is for the worship of you, it sounds weird, but that is going to be what you attract to yourself in love. That you're going to start to be like, I don't know how you were when you first got really confident with I'm accepting this from people, but I'd be like, no, like I could tell the energy from the person. They'd be like, but I'd be like, no, you're not for me. I can tell. Like the energy isn't right. And they'd be so mad. And then they call me a bitch. And it's like, yeah, I knew this. So
Yeah, you know, the I one thing, I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, so I love the way things that always line up in life. And so like lately there has been a lot of things like we're talking about right now that have been very, very upfront and in my face. And like, you know, the last few conversations I've had have been about like intuition and that intuitive pull. And I think that everything kind of comes back to that. But what you're talking about here too, and talking about worship and talking about that with ourselves, like thinking about, you know, ourselves in that place that so often people put everything else in front of them. And I absolutely love the question of, you know, if I was to ask you to name, you know, 5 things that you love in your life, you know, where are you going to land on that list? Or if I was to ask you, name all the things that, you know, you love, how long is it going to take until we get back to you saying you? And most of the time, people don't think of saying themselves when that number one answer should be you. And yes, like, and then I've had that come back to where it's like, oh, but my children, oh, but this. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're not in that place of being 100% with yourself, how can you ever give 100% to anybody else? Because you're not allowing yourself to have that. So like, you're giving yourself a fraction of what you should be taking in, and then you're divvying that fraction out to all of these other people. So then what's left? Like, it starts with that place of being at home within yourself and being able to say, hey, I love myself completely. I am here, I am present. And then and touching back on that, and that being present is so important, because we so often take for granted the time that we have, and you know, and the time that we share with other people. Like, it breaks my heart when I see things where people are just using time as it's like, just, you know, you wouldn't use your money in the bank to just pay it out to a whole bunch of people and things that don't mean anything, but you use your time like that. Like, your time is valuable to you. And yes, time may be a construct in its own right, but we take that construct for granted and we divvy this all out, and we're not present in our own life. And so, you know, it's like that coming back to home is so, like, that's another one of those pivotal places to go back into that, like, hey, I'm going to learn how to do more of this for myself, because being at home is where you should be. Like, you should be able to have that bank of you know, have like an amount of abundance in it before you start trying to divvy out, you know, payments to everybody else.
Oh no, exactly. Like that's what I was posting about Lakshmi earlier. I don't think I described it enough, so I'll try to describe it better here. So something I realized last year while I was pregnant, I was talking about like the shadow work coming up like crazy, and it was during the Taurus moon, so that made it even more interesting, because that's, you know, Taurus is really about money. So not completely, but it is, and also about so Lakshmi is tied to Venus, and so is Taurus. So that was also interesting. And what I realized is that early on growing up, my mother would always say to me how I owe her these things. And like whenever I'd want to go do something, like I found my own like self-worth, I was creating my own path and starting to do that. And I would get in so much trouble. Like she'd be like, I'm tearing the family apart. And all these different things that she would say to me that would like take me away from anchoring within myself and then going outside again. But with Lakshmi, it's you realizing that you have learned that you are in debt to a bunch of people. And what does that lead to? You creating a life that includes debt because you're trying to live a life that's unaligned with you. So you're not going to create money that's, you know, it's magnetized to you to pay for these things, because it's not magnetized to you at all. You're not meant to have those things in your life. So then I like, it doesn't surprise me how much debt I ended up having and working through my credit and all of that, because I believe that I always owed people things. So I'd always find a new thing to owe, like whether it be like, oh, here's a new coach. Okay, let's like start a plan to like owe money. So, and all these different things. And then I know I keep saying that. I have to work on that. But there was something else that you said earlier. I was trying to think to tie back into, but if there's something you want to go to, that's fine too, while I think. But um, you said something earlier on getting, sorry,
That's okay.
myself a second. But I was trying to think too, like, so for shadow work, you can also work on the journals if you want to too. That's another great one. I know you make journals. Do you have any for shadow work that you want to recommend right now?
I do have one.
Okay.
I have one that is on Etsy, and I can link that too. It's one that it goes through a few different areas, but it's all about exploring the inner voice within us and how to, again, tying back to that intuitive side is listening to that inner voice and then being able to work through. There are some great shadow work prompts that are in there, but I also have a whole section of like, as you're working through these places and being able to take this stand in your life as well. And like being able to create these other boundaries that a lot of times, like when you're going through this learning, I know for me is like, I learned where my boundaries have definitely fallen short in my life with other people. And I'm like, but I don't know what to say. Like, how do I say no? Okay. And then I, got to a point where no is a complete sentence. Like there doesn't have to be more than that. It can be NO period. Like, but like, I have this whole area that has like alternatives for different things that come up, or like, how to say, like, instead of saying this, like this very fixed mindset type of saying, you're going to go over to here, like, I'm working on this. And like, it's just got this whole framework for being able to move forward and listening to that inner voice and being able to explore and become friends. So again, to bring you back home within yourself.
Yeah, I love how you're saying the actual no. So you made me think of how so people ask us a lot, like, how do I have boundaries? And I came up with a really good answer for someone. I try to keep things short and really simple. You probably realize that. So you won't hear me going into like, angels and things and all those things. So for me, it's you have to realize that you have to have self boundaries to have boundaries outside of yourself. It's that internal no to yourself when you start to decide that something else is more important than you, like we were talking about. Until you can do that, then you're not going to be able to say no to someone else. Or you to, so this is a good example. A great way for you to have self boundaries is, let's say that you need time to work on your business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set 30 minutes on my timer, and that 30 minutes is for me. If there's no timer, I'm a Gemini. I'm also a manifesting generator. I'm going to go do a million other things. But when there's a timer, I feel like, okay, this is my time. And when you keep doing that, it's going to be really easy for you to do that. And you're going to be able to fill that time and have a schedule for your kids, what they can do. I hate putting Coco Melon on, but I don't run it all day if I have to. Last resort, Coco Melon can go on for a bit. I can always go to a coffee shop and baby wear, feed the baby, and get some work done. There's like a million different ways and possibilities to get it done. It's just whether you want to do it or not. And that's like the hardest thing to hear. It's been the hardest thing for me to hear as I went through postpartum, because I always had those excuses where you're gonna be like, but mom, like, okay, but it's not true. I actually can if I want to. So like for me right now, it's doing my podcast at 5 in the morning, sometimes 6 in the morning, and the baby is there with me sometimes. Sometimes my husband can take care of the baby too and help out. It's understanding that it doesn't get to be perfect, like perfect how it is. If I'm waiting for perfect, I will never blossom and grow. So, and it's important, as we were saying, to come back to your body, because how do plants grow? They root and they rise. And also, to give you some more welcoming in of the shadow work, how do seeds grow? Seeds actually get really overwhelmed with water and then they explode and then they root in. That's what shadow work is going to help you do, root in and to rise into your power. And something amazing too about seeds is that some of them, like eucalyptus, can survive fire. Like it's just absolutely crazy, and fire actually helps it to actually grow. It's just absolutely crazy how plants are. Like there's crazy places I can go with plants. These
I
are all actually lessons from Hades. So
Well, like I've always had this fascination with weeds, although they can be like a big pain in the butt, like when they're growing in places that you don't want them to be. But I'm so fascinated with them because you can watch them grow through concrete and see them rise up because that concrete's not going to stop them. So, like, years ago, I had this whole thing that came to me. It was like, be like a weed, like, just keep going. Like, it doesn't matter if that concrete's up against you. You can find a way through the cracks. You can find a way to grow so that you can be out in the world in the way that you want to be seen. And that's so huge. And, going back to like what you said, I myself am also a Gemini. So I can get pulled in 5,000 different directions, and I get passionate about all of them. Right. Every single one of them. My book collections show, where my passions have lied. And I probably have a book on like every nutrition thing. I have a book on like all the things self-development, like over here. Like, it's just that Gemini power of like, hey, like, I love everything. Like you, but I'm going to apply it back to my life. Like, I want to know how this works. And then I want to be able to figure out how I can make this work for me. So like, that part, I'm like, oh yeah, I got that. Like, it's,
we love transformation. We absolutely do. We're like ready for it all the time. I feel like
all the time. like I didn't know how symbolic the butterflies tattoos that I got on my neck would become to my life, but they have a very symbolic meaning to me now. And that whole just, like just that coming out, and in every shape of the word of coming out, like it's been this evolution of who I am. And, tying it back into what I love is that we have such an infinite amount of potential within us, and there's an infinite amount of potential within the world. Like, when we are part of this whole collective unit of this world, we get to tap into whatever it is that we feel called to do, or we wouldn't feel called to do it. And the ways that we do that, there are so many different ways that can work for someone. And it's just showing up to that calling of like, hey, you are meant for more. There is more out there for you. Like, everything is going to be, that journey, but that journey can be beautiful. That journey through that mess, the journey, like as that weed rising up, that weed didn't go through it easy. It had to push against the grain. It had to push against that concrete. And then it was able to rise up and be there. So, and even for that, like it had to root in, it had to rise up, and then here it is. And that's that beauty that we get to take from exploring the potential that we have within us. So, I always encourage that if there's something that feels right for you, to do it. If there's something that like you want to know more about, listen, like find out more, go within, do whatever it takes for you, because you are the most important, you are the most important piece of currency that you could ever have in your life. So be able to fill that bank up so that you're not spending it out on everybody else and leaving yourself with nothing. And that's where that potential, like, there is an infinite amount of potential that's there if you tap into it and keep going.
That's exactly it. I love that, to know that you are the worth, that you are the wealth. And it ties me back to Lakshmi when you say that too, because once we know, like I was saying before, like I wanted safety, so I found that for myself in my relationship. Well, also look at, what do you want to buy with money? What are you hoping for it to give you? And how can you give that to yourself too? It's the same idea as well.
Yeah.
I was actually curious, like, did you find when you came out that you were able to be more creative, like the creative energy got sparked for you?
Yes, like there's so many things that have been sparked from just coming out and owning like, hey, this is where I am in my life. And I don't think that, my life, prior to meeting my wife, like all of it, like I never had points in my life where like, oh, this like feels wrong. And I think that that's been a misconception that I've run up against, is like, oh, you had to feel like that was wrong. I'm like, no, that's not about those relationships that actually felt wrong. Like, it wasn't that, like, but now I am home. Like, I am home within myself, because the coming out, I allowed myself to just say, this is me. Like, there was no thought to it. Like, when I told like my first friends of like, hey, I'm going out on this date, a couple were like, huh? And then a couple other were like, and like, you're not telling us anything shocking, like, and so in that, it's just like, it's made it easier for me to just say, hey, like, yeah, this is where I am. But in so many other facets of my life, like I'm able to show up and just say, like, doing this show here, it's just saying, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Like, if somebody else doesn't like it, that's not my problem. Their opinion is not my problem. Like, I'm worrying about myself. And then, outside of that, anybody else's voices, those are not for me. Those are not the people that I'm meant to connect to, but whoever I'm meant to connect to, I will. So being able to pull that out, I've also been able to create like in that way that like, you know, the first idea that I had about a year and a half ago to get into selling the stuff that I'm selling on Etsy, selling the stuff that I sell on Amazon, having these books, you know, tapping back into this place that like I've always had this artistic side, but I would put it on a shelf. And, you know, I would not have that fun that I would, you know, as I got back into it, I'm like, okay, you know, where was this? But that's because I'm able to be free. And as you're able to be free, your mind frees up that space that was holding on to all of the things that were heavy before, because I'm allowing myself to be me. So I'm allowing myself to go, hey, like that's not, you know, that was who I was then. And this is who I am now. And, you know, that has been such a empowering place for me to stand in, to say, you know what, I am who I am. You know, if you don't like it, I don't care. I'm not going to put stock in your opinions anymore, because I'm going to go ahead and do the things that I love, do the things that bring me joy, and however I'm meant to do that. And so, yeah, like we've almost been together for 2 years now, and it has been such an incredible journey. And like, we're just beginning. Like we always talk, like we're at this, you know, place where there's so much more, like we're learning about each other and like just growing with each other. And we are very opposite of each other, which has a lot of compliments to go with it, because there's a lot of things that I believe in. And like, you know, I do go down these rabbit holes, and like spirituality is so huge to me, but I also believe in a lot of different things that go outside of that too. Like, you know, if we go down like the rabbit hole of simulation, and if we go down the rabbit hole of like stuff not being real and like all of this, and she'll just
that.
and she'll just kind of go, but I'm like, that's okay, because she gives me a different perspective of where she sits. Like, you know, I am very much live in the gray. She's very black and white. And so, you know, having that very black and white personality to kind of come up against, and then having that gray allows me to explore all the things in between, because I'm like, that shows me that I can dive into something that she's thinking, to go, okay, let me understand as best as I can from that perspective. So I'm not that narrow-minded, so that then that creativity can flow even more, because I can understand that there are so many different places to go with that, because I live in that gray space.
Oh no, that's amazing. I love the story of your journey. I really wanted to hear that. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Like it has been an incredible couple years, and you know, there's so much stuff that, you know, I have learned. And even, you know, last night had a conversation about feelings and emotions, and how there's something that I don't do anymore. And that is like, we often assume what we think our partner is feeling, or what we think a friend is feeling. But unless we are in their shoes, there is absolutely no way for us to know with 100% certainty how they are feeling and what emotions are actually coming up for them. And so, you know, now instead of, you know, going, hey, like, you know, are you mad? You know, do you have this going on? I ask a different question, and the different question becomes like, you know, I can tell that you're feeling something. Can you please let me know what it is you're feeling? So that I'm not assuming whatever emotion that's there, because when we assume whatever emotion and feelings going on there, we create a story that goes along with that. And now we've gone down this whole other path of, oh, they're feeling this because of all of these reasons. So like now I ask that question, and that has been something that, like, you know, it's huge, because I've learned it in the relationship, but now it applies to everything. Like, I can't assume that I know how you're feeling just because you have, you know, you're displaying certain things that, you know, in my mind remind me of certain places that I've been. But now I'm making an assumption based off of how I'm feeling. But, I'm not sitting there with that same story, having the baby, having all of this. So I can, in no way, shape, or form, can I go, I know exactly how you're feeling. And that's where I think it's so important to be able to take that in and understand that. So there have been a lot of things over the last couple of years in this journey that have really shown me this other side of life that, like, I can't predict this stuff. Like, you can have feelings and you can see, like, hey, like, I can hear, certain things that are going to go on, but those details, the magic's in the details that get to come out and that you get to see. So, like, that's I love life. Like,
I love that you're reminding us that we need to become present and realize in those moments that we're in a different relationship right now. That does take time to realize. I feel like that it's safe now to ask those questions and to not assume. I remember in fifth grade, there was a teacher that would spell out how assume. And when you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me because you have when you spell it out.
yep.
So I couldn't help but think about that. And you were bringing up about going into rabbit holes and how like sometimes things aren't for other people. Like when they listen to this, it might not be for them. And this is what I have to say about that, and it has to do with the goddess Hecate. I was reading a book, and I was gonna stop reading. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I don't believe in that. And then there was a part of me because I was reading about Hecate and or Hecate, however you want to say it. So I'll cover both. So and it's her saying to me that, you know what, it's not that we should like culture's doing this like crazy. Cancel culture is like, I don't agree with that one thing. So you need to go bye-bye. So you need to be canceled. You need to disappear from the world, be blocked and whatever else. And that's not the right way to do things.
Yeah.
You can not agree completely with someone and still have a great relationship and have a great deep understanding, which is what you're expressing about your partner too. Like you may not be into what she's into, but you can still have an amazing relationship bond. And that's true of ourselves too. And to realize too, when we have to really get into like, I need to cancel this and cancel that. Well, how often do you cancel yourself? I feel like we don't realize that. Stop canceling yourself. And that's like a big place that we need to start working on, to look in and see that. And definitely with the shadow work, you can start to do that. I just want to, before I forget, tie in that also to work on shadow work with deities, I like to meditate, like I was talking about that I did with the Morgan. You can do that. You can sit and meditate, get yourself into a theta state. So what does that look like exactly? So you want to get yourself finding what is that deep breath for you that takes you into a state of relaxation, but not where you're going to fall asleep. So it would be somewhere between so depending, like if you're pregnant, it could be a 5 count in and out, or if you have issues with breathing, so it's gonna be around maybe a 5 or a 6, I would say. But if you're, like you don't have anything issues with your health, it'd be around like a 7, 8, or 9. So in and out, play around with that and see what gets you to a relaxed state, somewhere where you're dreamy but not to fall asleep, like I said. So you don't want to breathe like 10 in and out, and hold for 2 in between, and invite the god or goddess you want to work with, and remind yourself that you can give an offering if you want. Like, let's say I'm working with Thor, I can give him some whiskey if I want. If that's like aligned with me, I can do that. Sometimes deities just come to you, like I said. Like Thor came to me when I was really pregnant. I was actually starting labor, and I had to pull on the side of the highway because I could not see past the storm. This was very significant because it actually did help me with labor. And it was me realizing that the storm can't devour me because I am the storm. And that is true in a lot of situations in life where we're trying to birth something. Remember that any storms that come up, any wars within your mind, it's you. So you have the power to make the shift.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I love that. We definitely have the power to make the shift. Like, that is a power that is within us all. You know, even if we've suppressed it, that power can be tapped into whenever we decide to say, hey, I'm ready to wake you up. I'm ready to wake up that power within me. And I'm ready to, put that back out there and, rise up. That storm can be loud, and it can brew, and it can just go, hey, like, here, it's time. So with that, say, what do you have going on in the world right now? Where can people find you and connect with you?
So I recently renamed my podcast to the Sovereign Mother Goddess podcast. You can find that on Anchor FM. It's also on a bunch of other different sites like Spotify and then Apple. And then I'm going to change the name soon, not yet, but ConstanceDeGroat.com has a lot of my content. I'm also updating it right now and adding in the like the actual dialogue from all of my episodes. So I'm excited about that. And I'm going to be holding a challenge where I do deity shadow work and introduce it more. So I'm thinking about doing that around June 17th. So kind of my own celebration of bringing in my second child into the world. Also, I mean, my birthday's June 5th, but we'll see. So which one feels good for me on that? And I do want to do a class where I teach about how to work with your body, as far as not just your period, but so much more than that. You have ovulation and how to make it work with your life. Like ovulation is the best time. Like I'm ovulating right now. That's why I chose this date for the podcast. I am not kidding. You go, so people don't know this completely, but you go through there's 2 weeks about, depending on how many days your cycle is. So I can't speak for you because there's a lot of variety of what is normal. Some people have a 21-day cycle. Some people go through 38 days before they get their period. There's a lot of normal out there. So know that. So in case you're scared all the time with that. And it's important to know that your PMS and your period are actually when you do shadow work for yourself. It's it's a great time for you to really honor whatever you're feeling, honor the rest. You're going to be very you can actually utilize that energy in a way that works for you with your business. I'm sure you know what I mean, where you want to like nitpick your relationship or something like that. It's like, okay, how about we look at our business and see what's working, what's not working. And then this is a good time to create a plan. And then you start to take action and pre-ovulation and ovulation, like energetic things like that, where you can make those shifts for yourself. I'm really into that. And then like how to support your body through your period, and like ginger is amazing. It can kill your pain. There's so many things. Like I absolutely love that stuff because it's empowering, even though we make periods sound disgusting. It's really good to know about your body and to know about ovulation and how that works to empower you.
Yeah. And, the more I started to learn about the phases that our body's going through and how to really kind of tap into that, there are going to be better times to work than other times. There's going to be better times that you need to just rest. There's times to listen to like what it is you're craving and all of this. And like, again, that was, there, I went down that, like, listened to a couple books, and just went, oh, like I just like soaked it all in because it all makes sense to me. And as we are learning the different combinations of what it is that makes sense to us, we are able to combine that in a way that is unique to who we are. Like, and that's why I totally suggest like being able to anything that is intriguing, find out more about whatever that is and how you can apply that back to you, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody is different, and there's not one person out there that can give you a complete blueprint on how to run your life except for you. And so being able to combine all of these different things that I've learned has made it so that I can show up and do these things and be able to talk to like incredible people like yourself, and like, just being able to share that energy, because it's listening to what works. And there's no way that is out there that you feel resonates with you that is going to be like the wrong path for you. When it's calling you, there's something more to it. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. You have been so much fun to talk to. And like, I have so much after this that I'm like, oh, I'm going to look into that and that. And so there is definitely parts of this that I'm going to have to play back for myself. So thank you so much. And yeah.
Just for laughs, I'm sure this is true. Like, there's a certain time of the month where you shouldn't speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and when you feel that, trust that. And that's definitely PMS and your period. Save the talking for ovulation. And sometimes I say pre-ovulation, just key into that and you'll know. But thank you so much for this. And if people want, I also do deity consultations to help you find out who should you work with right now on the shadow work. So, and I really appreciate this time with you. And I want to invite you to on my podcast.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I can't wait till we get to talk next.
Okay, awesome. So thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.